It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship once again. I do want to thank the member for Brigg and Immingham for securing this timely debate and for his comprehensive report from his visit to Gibraltar. His experiences there closely match my own. And just on that note, I do want to draw members' attention to my register of interest because in June last year, I had the pleasure of going to Gibraltar at the invitation of the government of Gibraltar. And while I was there, the employee of the government of Gibraltar that showed us round, a man called Guy Dumas, he and I got on so well that I ended up recruiting him as my parliamentary assistant. And he has provided enormous assistance with this speech today. I'm very grateful to that. And just one final point, he is flying back to Gibraltar in just over a week's time to get married to the love of his life, Holly. And I'm sure we all wish them well in their marriage. Now, there has been one cloud, the Levante cloud, as it's known in Gibraltar, hanging over the rock since 2016. As has already been mentioned, they didn't vote for Brexit. 96% of them voted to remain in the EU, but they've had to deal with the consequences, and rightly so, because they're part of the British family. But after a decade of uncertainty since that referendum, a positive future is finally beginning to shine through those clouds. Now, much of the lead-up in the focus on this agreement has been on the key issue of sovereignty, and completely understandably. Gibraltarians are proudly British. They have reaffirmed that in 2 referendums, where 99% of them voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. Now, thankfully, as has already been stated, Article 2 of the draft agreement says that this agreement is, and I'm quoting here, without prejudice to the legal positions of the UK and Spain regarding sovereignty over Gibraltar. And the House of Commons Library notes that the agreement includes this term and that the government of Gibraltar has obtained legal opinions confirming that the agreement makes no concessions over the issue of sovereignty. So from a legal perspective, entirely from that perspective, an important box has been ticked. So today I'm going to focus my remarks on a different principle, and that's Gibraltar's right to self-determination and the democratic will of its people and of its elected government. So my visit to Gibraltar last year began with an unexpected detour. As anyone who has visited Gibraltar will know, the mile-long runway and the combination of strong winds across it means that you often have to take a detour to Malaga because the flights can't land, and that was my experience too. So this meant that I had to go to Gibraltar over the land border. Now, that's a routine experience for everybody living on the rock and the surrounding area. And thankfully, while I didn't experience a particularly long queue to cross from Spain into Gibraltar, I know that that's not always the case. It just isn't. There are over 15,000 cross-frontier workers in Gibraltar, and that border is the only land point entry into Gibraltar. So that means that delays of minutes can quickly become hours, and then those hours are taken away from time with families and time at work. So with this agreement, those routine passport checks that have caused those queues will come to an end. The agreement is, of course, intended to ensure that the free circulation of people and goods continues, and it removes those physical barriers at the border. And as a Labour MP, I do welcome any agreement that improves the lives of working people. Now, during my visits, I did meet with the Gibraltarian government ministers, I met with the Chamber of Commerce, I met with the Federation of Small Businesses, I spoke with businesses just as the Honourable Gentleman described, and I spoke with many others. Now, they all spoke about the implications of any potential agreement, which hadn't been announced then, it was announced a few days later. But they did speak about Gibraltar's turbulent history with Spain being a factor. Their feelings were definitely mixed. There was a mix of hope, anxiety, and an acceptance of the reality that was facing them. Now, there was anxiety amongst the business community about the effects that new tax arrangements might have on their businesses. The controlled border, while frustrating in the way that I described earlier, did provide a sense of security, and some worried that removing those routine checks could affect crime on what is a very peaceful peninsula. But they also acknowledged that the alternative to this agreement is a hard border. Some of the people I spoke to had lived through the closed frontier years in 1969 to 1985, and they didn't have to imagine what a no-deal outcome would look like. They'd already lived through it, and they were cautioning me and the other people I was with against it. But what did strike me is that there was both a passion for their home and a practical approach to the reality that they were facing. I did remember speaking to one of our drivers during the visit. We discussed the agreement, and although he had concerns that I've set out, he was very practical about it. He told me that he crosses into Spain every single weekend, and he said that if the agreement would make that easier and save him hours of queuing, then he was all for it. Now, Gibraltarians are a thoughtful and politically minded people. I know this because I'm pleased to be a secret member of the Speak Freely Facebook group. I hope that they don't kick me out after declaring that, especially since I'm not a resident of Gibraltar, but it has been wonderful to follow the political discussions in there. And I've got no doubt that some of that political awareness comes as the result of years of vigilance with a neighbour who claims sovereignty over their rock. But the visit did leave me in no doubt that while Westminster scrutiny is absolutely valid, it's absolutely welcome, we have to ratify treaties here, it should not override the people of Gibraltar's wishes. So, obviously, I said earlier, days after my visit, UK, EU, Spain, Gibraltar, they all announced that political agreement. And then that draft agreement was published this February. Now, Gibraltar's Parliament then subsequently passed a motion supporting ratification. We've already heard this. Every single one of its 17 members voted in favour of ratification. That is the kind of consensus we can only dream of in this place. Now, there can be no doubt that this agreement has the democratic legitimacy from the government of Gibraltar. Now, I absolutely recognise the desire of honourable members who have no doubt have the interests of the Gibraltarian people in mind to scrutinise this agreement to the fullest. The UK has a constitutional duty towards Gibraltar, even though Gibraltar is almost entirely self-governing. But if the agreement commands the support of Gibraltar's elected government and every single member of its parliament, then we must give very considerable weight to that democratic judgment. Our parliament can and should scrutinise, but it should not substitute its own judgment for the democratic will of Gibraltar, particularly when the agreement protects sovereignty and military autonomy. And just a word on military autonomy. Gibraltar, we know, continues to play a key strategic military role. Defence is one of the United Kingdom's reserved constitutional responsibilities, so I fully understand why Parliament must scrutinise that aspect of any agreement carefully. But here too, a very important box has been ticked. The UK military base is not affected by the agreement, and those aren't my words. Those are the words of the outgoing commander of the British forces in Gibraltar, Commodore Tom Guy, who said that the agreement is positive from a military perspective because it protects the key principle of military autonomy. So our armed forces will continue to operate to, through and from Gibraltar unhindered. Now, obviously, under the CRAG process, treaties must be laid before Parliament, before ratification. I mentioned that earlier. But the political principle, I hope, is clear. The power to decide Gibraltar's future should rest with the people of Gibraltar. Our government and Parliament should respect their wishes. So my only two questions to the Minister are this. I know he's very highly regarded on the Rock. So can he confirm to this House and to the Gibraltarian people that there will be a legally binding mechanism to ensure that no UK government will be able to withdraw from this agreement without Gibraltar's consent? And in a similar vein, can he confirm that no future UK government will be able to block Gibraltar from withdrawing from this agreement if it was the democratically expressed will of the Gibraltarian people? That would be the strongest way to ensure that Gibraltar continues to control its own future. So next week, the Levante cloud over the Rock may finally begin to lift. Gibraltar may feel different, but British sovereignty has been protected and military autonomy is completely unchanged. And now it should be the Gibraltarians who determine their future in accordance with the principle of self-determination. Thank you.